Welcome to 10 Minutes a Day, a daily reading of the Catholic Church's social encyclicals. Today we continue with Octogesima Adveniens, written in 1971 by Pope Paul VI, on the 80th anniversary of Rerum Novarum. Among the victims of situations of injustice, unfortunately no new phenomenon, must be placed those who are discriminated against, in law or in fact, on account of their race, origin, color, culture, sex, or religion. Racial discrimination possesses at the moment a character of very great relevance by reason of the tension which it stirs up both within countries and on the international level. Men rightly consider unjustifiable and reject as inadmissible the tendency to maintain or introduce legislation or behavior systematically inspired by racialist prejudice. The members of mankind share the same basic rights and duties, as well as the same supernatural destiny. Within a country which belongs to each one, all should be equal before the law, find equal admittance to economic, cultural, civic, and social life, and benefit from a fair sharing of the nation's riches. We are thinking of the precarious situation of a great number of immigrant workers whose condition as foreigners makes it all the more difficult for them to make any sort of social vindication, in spite of their real participation in the economic effort of the country that receives them. It is urgently necessary for people to go beyond a narrowly nationalistic attitude in their regard, and to give them a charter which will assure them a right to immigrate, favor their integration, facilitate their professional advancement, and give them access to decent housing where, if such is the case, their families can join them. Linked to this category are the people who, to find work, or to escape a disaster or a hostile climate, leave their regions and find themselves without roots among other people. It is everyone's duty, but especially that of Christians, to work with energy for the establishment of universal brotherhood, the indispensable basis for authentic justice and the condition for enduring peace. We cannot in truthfulness call upon that God who is the Father of all if we refuse to act in a brotherly way toward certain men created in God's image. A man's relationship with God the Father and his relationship with his brother men are so linked together that Scripture says, "He who does not love does not know God." With demographic growth, which is particularly pronounced in the young nations, the number of those failing to find work and driven to misery or parasitism will grow in the coming years unless the conscience of man rouses itself and gives rise to a general movement of solidarity through an effective policy of investment and of organization of production and trade, as well as of education. We know the attention given to these problems within international organizations, and it is our lively wish that their members will not delay bringing their actions into line with their declarations. It is disquieting in this regard to note a kind of fatalism which is gaining a hold even on people in positions of responsibility. This feeling sometimes leads to Malthusian solutions inculcated by active propaganda for contraception and abortion. In this critical situation, it must, on the contrary, be affirmed that the family, without which no society can stand, has a right to the assistance which will assure it of the conditions for a healthy development. It is certain, we said in our encyclical Populorum Progressio, that public authorities can intervene within the limit of their competence by favoring the availability of appropriate information and by adopting suitable measures, provided that these be in conformity with the moral law, that they respect the rightful freedom of married couples. Where the inalienable right to marriage and procreation is lacking, human dignity has ceased to exist. In no other age has the appeal to the imagination of society been so explicit. To this should be devoted enterprises of invention and capital as important as those invested for armaments and technological achievements. If man lets himself rush ahead without foreseeing in good time the emergence of new social problems, they will become too grave for a peaceful solution to be hoped for. Among the major changes of our times, we do not wish to forget to emphasize the growing role being assumed by the media of social communication and their influence on the transformation of mentalities of knowledge, of organizations, and of society itself. Certainly, they have many possible aspects. Thanks to them, news from the entire world reaches us practically in an instant, establishing contacts which supersede distances and creating elements of unity among all men. A greater spread of education and culture is becoming possible. Nevertheless, by their very action, the media of social communications are reaching the point of representing, as it were, a new power. One cannot but ask about those who really hold this power, the aims that they pursue, and the means they use, and finally, about the effect of their activity on the exercise of individual liberty, both in the political and ideological spheres, and in social, economic, and cultural life. The men who hold this power have a grave moral responsibility with respect to the truth of the information that they spread, the needs and the reactions that they generate, and the values which they put forward. In the case of television, moreover, what is coming into being is an original mode of knowledge and a new civilization, that of the image. Naturally, the public authorities cannot ignore the growing power and influence of the media of social communications and the advantages and risks which their use involves for the civic community and for its development and real perfecting. Consequently, they are called upon to perform their own positive function for the common good by encouraging every constructive expression, by supporting individual citizens and groups, and defending the fundamental values of the person and of human society, and also by taking suitable steps to prevent the spread of what would harm the common heritage of values on which orderly civil progress is based. While the horizon of man is thus being modified according to the images that are chosen for him, another transformation is making itself felt, one which is the dramatic and unexpected consequence of human activity. Man is suddenly becoming aware that by an ill-considered exploitation of nature he risks destroying it, and becoming in his turn the victim of this degradation. Not only is the material environment becoming a permanent menace, pollution and refuse, new illness, and absolute destructive capacity, but the human framework is no longer under man's control, thus creating an environment for tomorrow which may well be intolerable. This is a wide-ranging social problem which concerns the entire human family. A Christian must turn to these new perceptions in order to take on responsibility, together with the rest of men, for a destiny which from now on is shared by all. While scientific and technological progress continues to overturn man's surroundings, his patterns of knowledge, work, consumption, and relationships, two aspirations persistently make themselves felt in these new contexts, and they grow stronger to the extent that he becomes better informed and better educated. The aspiration to equality and the aspiration to participation, two forms of man's dignity and freedom. Through the statement of the rights of man and the seeking for international agreements for the application of these rights, progress has been made towards inscribing these two aspirations in deeds and structures. Nevertheless, various forms of discrimination continually reappear: ethnic, cultural, religious, political, and so on. In fact, human rights are still too often disregarded, if not scoffed at, or else they receive only formal recognition. In many cases, legislation does not keep up with real situations. Legislation is necessary, but is not sufficient for setting up true relationships of justice and equity. In teaching us charity, the gospel instructs us in the preferential respect due to the poor and the special situation they have in society. The more fortunate should renounce some of their rights so as to place their goods more generously at the service of others. If beyond legal rules, there is really no deeper feeling of respect for and service to others, then even equality before the law can serve as an alibi for flagrant discrimination, continued exploitation, and actual contempt. Without a renewed education in solidarity, an overemphasis of equality can give rise to an individualism in which each one claims his own rights without wishing to be answerable for the common good. In this field, everyone sees the highly important contribution of the Christian spirit, which moreover answers man's yearning to be loved. Love for man, the prime value of the earthly order, ensures the conditions for peace, both social peace and international peace, by affirming a universal brotherhood.